So Dexter Shurney is our guest speaker today. He is a board certified physician, and he has some titles behind his name. He's an MD, he's an MBA, he's an MPH, and he has FACLM credential, which is law. He is the Chief Health Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office at Adventist Health. He is also president of the Blue Zones Wellbeing Institute. And this research subsidiary of Adventist Health that focuses on applied population subsidiary of Adventist Health that focuses on applied population health research, including social determinants, payment reform, that's very important, and lifestyle medicine. So this institute also advises healthcare executives on value-based strategies and options and operations. So Dexter has written a book called Integrating Wellness into Your Disease Management Programs. And I wish we had known about the book a little earlier because we would have all read it, but we are going to read it. We are ordering that book right now. The publication is a how-to strategic guide for employers that want to innovate their approaches to chronic condition management. So, you know, you're a well-regarded keynote speaker, and we're so pleased to have you with us today. And so we all are going to have questions, I'm sure. So, you know, write your questions down. Don't forget your questions because we'll have a Q&A near the end of this opportunity. So thank you, Dexter. And thank you for being my cousin as well. And hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
Okay, so let's go.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Patricia. And hi to all my family members out there. It's really nice to have so many family there, but I consider everyone in the house of God to be family. So hello to the bigger family as well. So I'm happy to do this. Since we are all family, I thought I would take a less of a formal approach today and do this more conversational. And so I hope that works out for you. I know that you have questions. I have quite a few slides. And so I also think that doing this in a conversational way will be the best. What I can do is I can sort of pique your interest along a lot of lines related to the topic. And then when I'm done, if you want to do a deeper dive into any of those, we can certainly do so in the Q&A. But I wanted to sort of lay a large table for you, so to speak, and then you kind of pick and choose where you want to go and dine a little more. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, I'm going to try to go into full mode here. And so Patrice actually went a lot of background, but one of the things that she asked me to do initially was to talk about what I have learned about lifestyle medicine in my career. And I want to tell you that it's all happened by accident. It wasn't, you know, one day I woke up and I said, I want to be this lifestyle medicine doctor and I want to do these kinds of things. But you know how life happens, and it just so happens that I've had a chance to serve as a physician in healthcare, a lot of which has been administration, and I've been able to do some things around lifestyle medicine, really trying to move the needle on this. As you know, most physicians are not really pushing lifestyle medicine to the extent that it should. We know that this is one of the most powerful forms of medicine. But, Patricia mentioned that one of the things I do in my current role is really trying to get reimbursement around this. The reason you don't see more lifestyle medicine is, one, it's really not taught in medical school or nursing school, or even registered dietitians to a big extent. And there's certainly not good reimbursement around it. I as a surgeon, you can do a procedure and make $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in less than an hour doing a procedure. If you spend that hour talking to someone about eating broccoli and kale and doing the things that you've been learning about in creation health, you'll only be able to bill a few $100s, if that. The economics of this really is what drive it. And so if I am going to see a person, and bill under an EMM code, why not just give them a medicine and get them out of my, out of the office in 10 or 15 minutes? So, but anyway, what I will do, and the reason I'm showing you this is that you'll see some of this come up in my presentation, and I'll show you data from different opportunities where we've done this. I also like to always start out a little bit with a group like this in particular about my story. And so it hasn't always been just a professional story, but I wanted to share that, I've struggled with a lot of these issues myself. I was, we use the word husky. I used to wear husky clothes when I was young. And this is a picture of me when I was about 9 years old, standing in front of my grandmother's house. My cousins on the call will recognize this house. And we just sold it, by the way. You can see that I was overweight. Here I am in the middle. I'm already a physician. I'm already board certified in preventive medicine. And yet I'm suffering from these kinds of things that we're talking about. And you would think that if I am a board certified physician in preventive medicine, that I would know how to prevent the very things that I was actually suffering from. I was pre-diabetic, I was hypertensive, and I had a cholesterol well over 200 total cholesterol. And I was on medications for my cholesterol as well. And I had the fortune of working for one of the companies I just showed in the previous slide. And one of the things that I was in charge of was bringing together a group of experts on disease management. And so we brought in the experts from Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, because I was living in Vanderbilt, in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, UCLA, Northwestern, all these large institutions. We had cardiologists, we had endocrinologists, and we were going to talk about how we're going to manage disease for our populations. And someone mentioned to me, well, do you have anyone, a lifestyle medicine physician? And quite frankly, I didn't even know what that was. I said, lifestyle medicine, what's that? And they gave me a few names. We invited those people in. And anytime you joined the group as a physician, you had to share your data. Well, the data that these physicians shared was just outstanding. And they were showing people reversing their disease, coming off of medications, getting healthier. And it really intrigued me. And I said, you know what? I have these diseases. Why don't I try it on myself? And I did, and lo and behold, great things happened. I came off all my medications. I lost about 65 pounds. I felt better than ever. And I stand in front of you or sit in front of you on this call about 65 pounds lighter than I was back then, much older, and I have none of those diseases, and I'm on no medications, praise God. And so what I did then, yes, absolutely. And so what I've done since then is I've been sort of this evangelist going around and saying, why don't we do more of this? And now also trying to align reimbursement for physicians so that they too can practice this kind of medicine and not go broke. If you think about it, if no one had a disease, there wouldn't be as many office visits, the hospital beds would be empty, and healthcare would go broke. So we have to change reimbursement so that we can actually make this happen, and so that doctors and nurses are actually incentivized around keeping people healthy and not just treating people when they're sick. How is health produced? Think about that as we go through this. If you think about it, and this is well founded, this is from the World Health Organization. We know that healthcare is only about 10% of the solution. Lifestyle, environment is huge. If you think about the 8,760 hours in a day, where is health produced? It's not in the doctor's office. Even if you have a chronic disease, how many hours do you spend with the doctor? It's all those things that you do in between. It's how you sleep, it's how you exercise or don't exercise. Those are the things that are producing health. And we see that time and time again. Some of the work that I do, I just touched on this in the Institute, is that we try to bring the environment together with the practice of medicine, because we know that lifestyle medicine can be very powerful, but we also know that the environment and the community can be very powerful as well. And so what we're hoping to do here is hit the sweet spot, bringing those two together. And so you'll see that come out as well. I've already mentioned that some of the studies that we're doing, randomized controlled trials on food as medicine, where we're comparing different diets and their ability to change the course of diseases. We're comparing in this first one, a healthy Mediterranean diet to a plant-based whole food diet. I don't use the word vegan or vegetarian because you can eat Oreos and French fries and be vegan. So a whole food plant-based diet is what we look for. And what we're looking to do here is to say, if food is really medicine, shouldn't you pay for it as health plans and insurers pay for pharmaceutical drugs? If you think about the tiered system that we're reimbursed on, wouldn't it be interesting if at that first tier, instead of generic drugs, we also have food? And so a person has certain diseases that could be treated by certain kinds of foods that should be in the benefit design. Your employer, your insurer, CMS, the government should pay for those, because this is truly value-based care. And if you think about it, food is actually more of an important treatment than a medication. If you have high blood pressure and you take a drug for that, it may be very good at lowering your blood pressure, but the food not only can lower your blood pressure, but it also helps you with hunger. And we know that with social determinants, a lot of people are suffering from food insecurity these days. We also know that a whole food plant-based diet will lower your risk for colon cancer because it's so high in fiber. We also know that the same food that you're eating for your blood pressure also helps to bring down or reduce your risk for cholesterol, et cetera, et cetera. And we also know that there are no adverse effects unless you're allergic to the food that we're giving you as well, versus if you ever listen to those commercials of the drug on television, you can hear all the side effects. Well, I can tell you today that those side effects are not with broccoli and blueberries, as we'll talk about in a moment.
Amen.
So why wouldn't people want to pay for this? Well, people say, well, we can't pay for food forever. That's true. You don't pay for a drug forever. You only pay for it when the person has the disease. So why not at least pay for these foods while the person has the disease? Because we know this kind of creation health and this food as medicine can actually reverse disease. And so I'll just say a little bit about that. People say, well, what do you mean reverse disease? Well, just that. I mean, if a person has a BMI of 30, and that's the definition of obesity, and they go on a diet and their BMI now is 24, which is the definition of normal, would you still consider that person to be obese? And the answer is no. Would you say that person has reversed their obesity? I would say yes. And so the same thing is with you have type 2 diabetes, and now I get you a normal A1C, normal fasting glucose, you're on no medications. Would you say that I have reversed your disease? And the answer would be yes. People might say, well, but if they go back eating the way that they did before, well, they'll get their diabetes back. Well, isn't that also true with obesity? If you go back eating the way you were when you had a BMI of 30, would you say that it too was not reversible? So that's the argument. Those are some of the things that we want to talk about it. The lifestyle medicine focused practice, I can say more about that a bit later if you want, but the basis here is that anytime you reverse a disease, you save the system a lot of money. So a type 2 diabetic runs the system anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 a year more. And so every year that person is in remission or has their disease reversed, you're saving the system money. But guess what? As we mentioned before, the providers don't get paid for that patient the same way. They make more money off of a type 2 diabetic. So this idea of residual or recurrent payments means that if you reverse the disease in year 1, I'm going to pay you in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, a bonus for what you did in year 1. That is something that no one else has tried to do. We're going to try to do this, and we're working with Blue Shield of California to see if this dog hunts, as they say. I have to apologize for being somewhat still from Nashville. The other thing I'll say is that, and thank you, Emmanuel Church there in Oakland. We're working with a church. This is a church of 8,000 in St. Louis, Missouri. It's a Black congregation, and it's not Adventist. It's AME, but it's Baptist. I'm sorry, and they are doing a lifestyle medicine with their 8,000 employees. 8,000 members, and so we're very excited about that as well. And so you're not the only group to do it, but you're in good company and certainly leading the way. And I like that. Blue zones, I'll just touch a little bit on that. Blue zones, as many of you know, are areas around the world where people live to be well into their hundreds and they're not sick. There were 5 original blue zones. And what they find is that people are living to be 100. They're not sick. They're not on medications. They're out walking and doing things. They're living life to its fullest. And they're not waking up every day saying, boy, how can I be happy today? How can I be healthy today? It just happens to them. Why does it happen? It's because their environment has actually been allowed that. These are the 5 original blue zones. Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Korea, Greece, Okinawa, Japan. And if you'll notice, there's one in North America. It just so happens that it's Loma Linda, California. You might look at the others and you'd say, these are areas where people are living in paradise. If I lived in Costa Rica, I could live to be 100 too. Well, you can't say that about Loma Linda. We all know that's about 60 miles from LA. It's right on the 10. The I-10, and it's a lot of traffic, it's a lot of smog, it's a lot of stress, it's a lot of Dilco and Carl's Jr. So what makes it different? Why are these people able to do that? It's intentional, right? So what they've done is they've looked at all of these places where people are living into their hundreds, and they put it all together. And you can kind of see a little bit of the variation. One of the things you'll see is that they eat very little meat in all of these places. They have a sense of community. And we'll talk about this. They have a sense of, socialization as well. And these are what they call, so there's in the center, you see the core 4, the move, the right outlook, eat wisely, connect, and then around the outer circle, you see the power 9. And for Adventists, we do all of those. We don't do the wine at 5. Those other areas, they do that, but we do have socialization. And so those are the power 9. And of course, Loma Linda has been doing the Adventist health studies for a long time, since the 1960s, and they have found some interesting things. And of course, this is what happens and what helps us to be a part of the business. And you can see that colorectal cancer is lower, death rates overall are lower for both men as well as women, coronary heart disease is lower among Adventists. And then you can see the findings, the specific findings that you see on the right. In Adventist Health Study number 1, they weren't smoking, they were eating plant-based diets, they were eating nuts. Higher meat consumption was associated with a higher risk of colon cancers, because we know that not all Adventists are vegetarian. Prostate cancer was reduced by 70% with soy milk. And so this is why there are blue zones. You think about it, right? And so this is what the data has shown, and this is what has happened because of that, or as a result. We, as Adventists, I can share this slide with us, is that, if you look at why we are Adventists and what we believe, it's the 5 S's. And then you can see under prophecy, we have this health message. Where did this whole idea of health come from? These are some of the things that really distinguish Adventism from other Protestant faiths. And the health message, which we think or look at as the right hand of the gospel, is right center there. Through prophecy, we have been instructed on how to live a healthy life. This is biblical. And the one that, these are texts that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. Body is full of God, and so we need to take care of it. And if I like this last one, Psalms 84:11, that the Lord will withhold no good thing from his people. And so sometimes we think if we have to live a healthy life that we're being disadvantaged, that it's a burden to be healthy, that it would be actually better to just eat what you want to eat and do what you want to eat and be lazy, and that might be a better way. But that's not the way the Lord works. There's a blessing in this. And I think that this is very important, and it gives us an advantage because we're not just doing it for ourselves. We're not just doing it so that we might feel better, or we might look better. We're doing it because we also have a connection with God, and we want that connection to be stronger. And as we're healthier, we can serve him better, and we can communicate better with the Holy Spirit because we've cleaned out the body temple. Again, it came from prophecy. And one of the things that is important to note here is that Ellen White brings out that God cooperates if men cooperate instead of working at cross purposes with him. That's not to say that, because oftentimes we don't know better, right? We do things that might harm our bodies, and we go to God and Christ and we pray and he heals us, and that's great. But we also need to, as we've learned more, to try to work in harmony with him. She talks about flesh meats, and she talks about how we need to avoid this for not only the best physical and mental, but also the best moral powers. And then she talks about rich desserts as well. So, and in some place she also wrote, I don't think I have it in this particular deck, but she actually said that sugar is worse than meat in terms of our health. And so oftentimes we may go give up the meat, but then we replace it with all the pies and the cakes. And she says in some ways that's even worse. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this was just to tie it back to why Loma Linda and Adventists are part of this blue zone. There are now over 72 blue zone projects across the country. And so there are communities all over. I've been spending a lot of time in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, doing some of this work within Black communities there. Churches are involved as well, and it's really getting a lot of reception. So it's a scale there. We're also doing mixed retail spaces where people want to buy condominiums that are a blue zone, a microcosm of a blue zone, so they buy a place and there's all this blue zone types of activity that are going on, from the restaurants to the retail stores and those kinds of things. Why is this important? We know that, as I said before, environment is important. Dr. Eaton here talks a lot about your zip code is more important than your genetic code. Again, these are things that we have known for a while. We know, for example, when you take identical twins, these are the monozygotic twins, and you separate them early in birth, different things happen to them. So by identical twins, that means the DNA is identical. You can't tell one twin from the other based on their DNA. They're identical. And yet what happens if you separate them early in birth, or early in life, I should say, put them in different environments, what you find is that you have different rates of obesity, different rates of cancer, different kinds of cancer, different rates of type 2 diabetes, et cetera. So what's the difference in your genes? Well, what's happening is that your lifestyle can affect the genetic expression. As a physician, if a patient comes to me and says, doctor, lung cancer runs in my family. Everybody gets lung cancer. I say, well, tell me more about that. And they say, well, everyone smokes 5 packs of cigarettes a day. We inherit habits, right, as well. And so, it could be that some people can smoke 5 packs of cigarettes a day and not get lung cancer. But for 90% of us, if we don't smoke like that, we're not going to get lung cancer. It's the environment, it's the smoke that has turned on those oncogenes, as they call them. And we forget that oftentimes when it comes to things other than tobacco. So I use tobacco because I think it makes the point and people can understand how that works. But it works for other things too. If we load our body down with sugars and all these other things, then that can affect our genetic expression as well. There's a term called genetics on that. The research going around that. I like this slide. It's a little bit provocative. It says, once upon a time, even Black folk were thin. And that was the case. Right now, if you look at the data, you'll see that among Black people, we're 50% more likely to be obese than our white counterparts. And, people going through medical school learn those things and say, oh, well, Black folks are just, they're just naturally obese because that's in their genetic makeup. No, it's not. We weren't that way. And if you look at this picture that has the circle, that's a picture of President Kennedy with a middle-aged Black man. You might look at these other pictures and say, well, those are young people. But those are middle-aged men there with the president, and they too were not obese to the extent that we are today. And so what has happened during that time? It's not our genes. Our genes have not changed in 50, 60 years. What has changed is our lifestyle. There are more fast food restaurants in Black neighborhoods. There are fewer Whole Foods in the good grocery stores and things like that. And we know from Ahmaud Arbery that we can't even run in some of our neighborhoods without getting shot. And there's this chronic stress that we have too, that leads to these things that we're experiencing. It's this environment that's being detrimental to our health. And so tying this back together is that we don't live in blue zones. Not all of us have the luxury of living in a blue zone. And so that's where lifestyle medicine, creation health, and some of the things that we're doing now are necessary to restore us back to living this healthier life that we have. We know as Black people, we're not doing so well, but even white folk aren't doing so well. 68% of adults across the board are either overweight or obese. We know that about a third of our children, and believe it or not, wait a minute, I lost my slides. Boy, right at the punchline too. How about that? Can you see it now?
Yes, we do.
Okay. And so 54% of our dogs are also overweight. And I put this up there because, they're talking about doing bariatric surgery for children. They're saying, this children obesity is an epidemic. We're going to do bariatric surgery. That's where they go in and they make you have a smaller stomach so that you can't eat as much. Well, would you do that for your dogs? Would you recommend bariatric surgery if you have an overweight dog? No. You would change that dog's environment, right? So again, we need to look at this from a more holistic standpoint. We are failing. We know that people, even on The Biggest Loser, they really, try hard, and they lose a lot of this weight, but then a year later, you go back and look at them, and most of them have either regained that weight or even more of the weight. And so what we know is that sustained outcomes are possible, but you have to start changing the environment. And one of the things that you guys are doing with Creation Health is that it teaches you some of that, how to change your environment. Right now, your favorite chili dish may not include meat. You might learn how, desserts and things that, perhaps don't have as much eggs and butter and things like that, and yet are very good, so that you still want to eat those things. What's also interesting is that about a third of Americans, only about 3% of Americans live a healthy lifestyle. This was done back in 2016. I could also show you a slide from 2000 from the Harvard's nursing study, and it was about 3.5% of nurses. So healthcare workers haven't done much better than the general population as well. And that's why we're a nation that has all of these illnesses. A lot of myths out there. Some people will say, I know how to eat healthy. I just need to cut out those carbs in my diet. If I just ate fewer carbs, I would be good. And so this is data from the USDA, since they were tracking it back at the turn of the last century. And so what you can see in the blue is that's the number of carbs we were eating in our diets back in 1910 compared to what we were eating in 2005. And so you can see we were eating quite a few more carbs, and yet the problem in our country back in 1910. Well, the difference is that they were eating whole food carbs and not processed carbs. You're probably familiar with this analogy, but if you take the Pringles potato chips, that red cylinder, it's about 900 to 1,000 calories in that cylinder. And if you sit down and you watch a little television, you could probably eat that cylinder of potato chips and not think twice about it. And you've consumed 1,000 calories. Yet it would take you about 6 medium-sized potatoes to get the same calories. You're not going to eat. I'm not. I'm not going to eat 6 potatoes in one sitting. I'm not even going to come close to that 1,000 calories. And by the way, the whole potatoes are much healthier for me. They can actually lower my blood pressure because they're so high in potassium. So that's the difference. So it's this processed food that's actually getting us in trouble. And we're blaming it on the carbs because that's one of the things that people process the most. And so, but we really need to think about the types of carbs that we're eating. All these diseases are related. They're all lifestyle related. For the most part, they're all preventable. As I said, lung cancer, it's 90% preventable. It's not 100% preventable. There are people that get lung cancer that never smoke, so don't get me wrong, but 90% of it's preventable if you don't smoke. And so a lot of these other things sort of fall in that same kind of category, including depression, brain health or immune health, those kinds of things. And so what's really exciting about this is that if you take a lifestyle medicine approach to prevention and care, then all of these things get better together. What's the intervention for obesity? What's the intervention for diabetes? What's the intervention for heart disease? Lifestyle medicine. A single intervention covers all of this, at least the majority of it. And this is not hard to imagine if you think about how you grow vegetables in your garden. You know that if you give your vegetables enough water, the right soil, the right nutrients in the soil, the right amount of sunlight, and you do that in the right balance, you're going to get a healthy plant. The roots are going to be healthy, the stem is going to be healthy, the leaves, and it's going to produce good fruit or vegetables, whatever you're producing. Everything gets better about that plant. Now, occasionally you'll get some aphids or something and you'll need to put some medicine on the plant, but that's no different than the human body. If you do these things, for the most part, you're going to be healthy. That's a Blue Zones approach. Occasionally we'll fall out of a tree and need some surgery on our leg or something, or we might get something else. We might still be that 10% that gets cancer, but for the most part, we're going to need a lot less intervention because we're taking care of the basics. This is relevant in the COVID age. They looked at blacks versus whites with COVID, and we all know that blacks are dying at a higher rate from COVID and getting infected more often. But this research out of Minnesota showed that if you adjust and control for lifestyle and social conditions, that actually whites die faster than blacks or at a higher rate than blacks. Isn't that something? And there was just some other research that came out this week that was very similar to this that came out in the beginning of the pandemic. So what's lifestyle medicine? Lifestyle medicine are those things that you've been learning in Creation Health. It's physical activity, it's nutrition, it's sleep, stress management, being substance-free and healthy relationships, and all of those things interact together. And it's a balance. You do this with an optimal balance, just like the plant. You just can't, water the plant and never put it in the sunlight. It's not going to be healthy. Well, oftentimes when we approach fitness, we say we're just going to exercise and we're not going to pay attention to some of these other things. And we wonder why, we're not getting healthy and all we're doing is exercising. Well, exercise is good, just like water is for the plant, but you got to add a little sunlight to it. You got to put some nutrients in the soil. The human organism is the same way. We just can't work on physical activity without paying attention to nutrition and some of the other things. The difference between lifestyle and lifestyle medicine is the therapeutic dose. So, if you have a backache and your doctor prescribes you aspirin, but only gives you 1 milligram versus 650 milligrams, which is the dose, a therapeutic dose of aspirin, you wouldn't say that the aspirin's no good. What you would say is that you didn't get the right dose of aspirin. 1 milligram isn't going to do the job. You need to have 650. And oftentimes when we approach lifestyle, it's the same thing, right? We don't give ourselves a therapeutic dose. Doctors don't really know how to prescribe lifestyle, but when you do it, it really works, and it works very well. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Lifestyle medicine, oftentimes people say, well, is that preventive medicine? Is that functional medicine? Is that integrative medicine? The answer is all of these things are related, but they do have their distinctions and they are different. So preventive medicine, for example, a lot of that's just early detection. If you look at the things that providers are paid for in preventive medicine, it's early detection. When I get a test for my PSA to see if I have prostate cancer, if I get if a woman gets a pap smear, that doesn't prevent the cancer. What it does is it's early detection, and that's good. So that means that we can now intervene at an earlier stage. We may need a less aggressive treatment, but it didn't prevent it. Lifestyle can actually prevent it and reverse it. The exception to that are, perhaps vaccinations or things like that. That's truly prevention as well as detection oftentimes too. So again, it's no mystery that the things that they found in the blue zones align very much so with lifestyle medicine. It's the same thing. The difference is that we're doing this at a therapeutic dose, and we're actually trying to use this as medicine to treat a disease as the beginning. This gets back to the point about how you can turn your genes off and on. This is work that was done by Dean Ornish out of Stanford University back in 2008. And what he did is he did a study where he took individuals, men, that had a low risk, or I shouldn't say a low risk, but they had prostate cancer, but it was a low-grade prostate cancer. And what he did is he took them in and he changed their lifestyle for 3 months. He took a picture, so to speak, of their genes for cancer before and after that 3-month intervention. And this is what he finds, is that pre-intervention, you can see the squares, the red squares mean that those are genes for prostate cancer that have been turned on for prostate cancer in the red. 3 months later, you can see that there's a lot more green that shows up in this OncoMap. That's pretty amazing. Now, I'm not trying to say that totally through lifestyle you can treat cancer, but I tell you, as a Black man who has normally a 50% higher rate of, getting prostate cancer, I'm going to take the interventions that they did and use those on myself to lower my risk for prostate cancer. And one of the things that we're finding more and more of and related to prostate cancer is dairy. Dairy is not really good for males and prostate cancer. It doesn't matter if you're white or you're black. It just doesn't work very well for us. And so I have in my diet now, I'm not drinking cow's milk. I'm not eating a lot of cheese because I think about my prostate when I do those things. We know, yeah. We also know that, this was out of the Cleveland Clinic. It showed a man, a physician actually, he had inoperable coronary disease. He went on a plant-based diet, and you can see that after several months, it opened up on his own. They couldn't do a bypass surgery. It opened up on his own. So just, powerful stuff. Again, that's not saying that we never need pills, we never need surgery, but this is something that we all can do. We are empowered to do this. Praise God. Some health systems are doing this. So for example, Geisinger out of not Philadelphia, but Pennsylvania has shown an 80% drop in healthcare costs. Now, the reason they can do this is because these lives are at risk. That means that they are at full risk for the health of these populations and the cost. And so therefore it makes sense for them to, have this food pharmacy program, pharmacy with an F, and they're showing these kinds of results. And by the way, the results are pretty much the same across the board, whether it's with a CHIP program or other folks that are, with risk-based populations trying this. You can see this from the portfolio study that compares a control group in terms of cholesterol versus diet versus lovastatin, which is one of the common drugs for high cholesterol. And you can see that the diet and the lovastatin are almost the same in terms of what they're doing. And you can see what the diet consisted of primarily over there to the left. This is out of Kaiser Permanente. So this is what Kaiser puts in front of its physicians for their risk-based populations. And it says physicians are becoming more involved in helping their patients adopt healthier lifestyles. Healthy eating may be best achieved with a plant-based diet. My goodness. Again, it's not coming from a religious, this is coming from a scientific background. I love it when science supports the Bible.
Yeah, that's right.
The other thing is that a lot of us have the misconception that well, if I have high cholesterol, all I have to do is pop a pill. If my body breaks down, they can fix me. But I tell you, it's a lot like Humpty Dumpty. It's really hard to put Humpty Dumpty back together when he breaks down. It's much better to avoid those things. I show this because when you see an ad that says, Lipitor reduces your risk of heart attack by 36%, those are relative numbers and not absolute numbers. The absolute numbers is what I've highlighted here, and they put this in the small print. Most people don't even know to read it. But in a large clinical study, 3% of the patients taking a sugar pill or a placebo had a heart attack compared to 2% of the patients taking Lipitor. So a third less, but you think, looking at the numbers, you think this is a miracle drug, right? I mean, you really only went absolute 1%. You went from 3% to 2%. I guarantee lifestyle could get you those same. Well, we just showed you a study where lifestyle actually gets you to the same endpoints. We live in a society where there's a pill for every ill. There are about 45 medications for a type 2 diabetic, and anyone that has diabetes knows what happens. They put you on one pill, a year later, they put you on another pill. A year later, they put you on another pill, and pretty soon you're on 2 or 3 pills. None of them lead to a cure. Not a single pill out there will cure your diabetes, but lifestyle does. Well, actually, there are only 2 things that will cure type 2 diabetes. One is lifestyle, and the other is bariatric surgery. Bariatric surgery will cure about a third of your type 2 diabetics on average. But guess what? If you have bariatric surgery, didn't you have to change your lifestyle?
Yeah. Right.
Seems like it'd be a lot easier just to change your lifestyle and not have the surgery and all the complications that are associated with it. And you know that a lot of these people that have had it have not had great results. Governor Christie out of New Jersey, showed some initial weight loss, but he's gained it back even with bariatric surgery. So it's not a panacea. Roker, on NBC, Al Roker had it as well. He had to go on another kind of diet after the bariatric surgery. So anyway, it just tells you that lifestyle. In fact, what people are talking about now is what is informed consent. Usually informed consent says, what therapy are you willing for me to do for you, patient? And you want to have medicines or you want to go on surgery? What we're saying is that we should also say, what about lifestyle? Because if you don't put lifestyle and you don't frame it in the right way, then we don't believe that you're really giving that patient all the information they need to make decisions. It could be a lot of patients will say, you know what, give me the lifestyle and not the bariatric surgery if they knew this kind of information. So that's the power in this as well. This is a study I did when I was at Vanderbilt. And this is some of the things that I'm still working on. But we showed an ROI for a diabetic cohort within 6 months. Referenced and downloaded. This is what led me to become the president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, because it just got so much attention. This is about a decade old now. But what we did is we showed that 24% of the participants were able to eliminate some of their medications. And this is how we saved money. Some of those medications were $20,000 a year. And so when you get people to come off of those, you get an ROI on this program. This was the CHIP program, which is also another Adventist program. It was initially put together by Hans Deal. Many of you know Hans. And what we did is we did year-to-year comparisons. We showed the CHIP population of diabetics compared to the non-CHIP population of diabetics. They all had the same health plan. They all were seeing Vanderbilt physicians who regard themselves as the best. We also compared costs to everyone else that was in the health plan. And you can see year over year, so we got rid of all the seasonality between this, that we saw a drop in the medical spend year over year in the CHIP population compared to those that were not. Their costs were actually going up, as you can see there in the second row, 5%, 2.1%. And the reason that you get an increase between first and second, not to get into all the details, is because it was a high deductible plan. And so they hadn't exhausted their deductibles and they weren't paying the copays. And so that shifted between quarter one and quarter two. But anyway, all of this is to say is that there's real savings there in this. Another job that I had, as you heard, was with Cummins Diesel, 55,000 employees. And Cummins was all about root cause, Six Sigma. So what's the root cause of all of our diseases? Our CEO would say, and I say lifestyle. That's the root cause. If you want to get to the core of the problem, we need to work on lifestyle. And I made the case and got the investments to do so. We built a $17 million clinic. I'll show you some pictures of here in a second. We were also written up in Fortune magazine because we were the first ones out there talking about reducing type 2 diabetes by 10% on our patient population. We thought we could do this because, again, research will show you that it's about, a third. You can do this with about a third. Depends on when you catch them in their disease cycle. If you catch them early, it can be actually 80%. But we said 10%, we can probably hit that number. And so that's how we went forward. We still did surgery, we still prescribed medication, but we made lifestyle the foundation of our approach to health and well-being. I mentioned this before, that we did be more than preventive services because preventive services actually don't address the root cause. And we use this formula called MC squared. And basically that is understanding what people's motivation for change is and then tapping into that motivation. You think about a sports team, you can have the best coach that you ever wanted, but if the team isn't motivated to win, then the coach is no good. And so you have to really tap into why people are trying to achieve these goals for themselves. And then you have to give them the competencies so that they can be successful. And then that whole conversation about environment, culture, community, environment to support those habits once they have changed. You know, you wouldn't put a recovering alcoholic who's been successful with their AA program, you wouldn't put them back to work in a bar. You probably say that's probably not the best environment for you. And so we have to be careful with these folks. Once they have been motivated and they've been successful, we have to then put them in the right culture and support their changes. Not rocket science. MC squared obviously is Einstein's equation for relativity, but it is brilliance in this regard as well, because this is really what enables people to make changes and to sustain those changes. When I talk about motivation, it's intrinsic motivation. It's why you want to do it. And oftentimes when people approach these programs, they're talking to people about things that don't really matter that much to them. So we make it broader because all of these things, as we saw in a previous slide, can be dealt with better through lifestyle oftentimes. And so we talk about brain health, reducing the risk of dementia. Lifestyle has been the only thing that really has been shown to reduce your risk for dementia, whether it runs in your family or not. There are some genes related to that, but oftentimes those genes can be overridden by a healthy lifestyle. And autoimmune diseases, we mentioned immunity and some of those things as well. So anyway, we cast a broader net. We try to, cause people to show an interest or find an interest that they can latch onto. One of the ways we do this is through sleep. 86% of the population at Cummins said that within a week or so, they're experiencing sleep deprivation and they're tired. And so you show someone how to get a better night's sleep and to show up every day feeling better because they had a good night's sleep. That oftentimes is very engaging. And we know that that's a healthy thing to do, because if you get less than 6 hours of sleep at night, you increase your risk of type 2 diabetes by about 30%. If you get less than 5 hours of sleep, it's the same as having 2 martinis. And so in a manufacturing environment, the managers don't want their workers driving forklifts with 2,000-pound engines if they're drunk, not on martinis, but literally so because they haven't gotten a good night's sleep. That's how you engage the business side of this with the well-being side of this. When you walked into our clinic, this is what you would see. Would you like to stop taking your medications? It might be possible. How many times you walk into your doctor's office and they tell you that? If anything, they're telling you how to take more medications and get on your case for not taking them, right? Mm-hmm. So again, this was the approach, and people, this really generated interest with people. They like this. This is our approach to type 2 diabetes. The traditional approach, obviously, they talk about physical activity, they talk about diet, glycemic load, and those kinds of things. We talked more about a whole food plant-based diet. We talked about, muscle mass and things like that with resistance therapy, but we also got into conversations around the gut microbiome. And we know that that's related to the fiber in your diet. Medications that could affect your gut microbiome, such as antibiotics and PPIs, and even aspirin. You've probably heard of leaky gut. Well, it turns out that aspirin and NSAIDs can actually mess up your tight junctions within your gut, so that you now are more prone to leaky gut. So we talk about that. We talk about chronic stress and cortisol, and even when you sleep, the times that you sleep and when you eat, that can affect that, intermittent fasting, resiliency, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're a type 2 diabetic, you're having conversations with your doctor and they're not talking about all of these things, they're not treating you 100%. I hate to say that, but they're not. And if they're saying the lifestyle doesn't work for you, we'll go back and say, well, are you telling me about how to do all these things? Are you prescribing sleep recommendations for me? Are you just giving me that pill and telling me to go lose weight, but not how to lose weight? So the problem is a lot of physicians don't get that training. We had to go back and train our physicians. So we had 60 physicians in the clinic that I'm going to show you here in a minute. We had to go back and train them. So we got professional training on this. This is the clinic that we built, 17 million, 28,000 square foot center. This is in Indiana. And this was one of several clinics that when I was there as the chief medical officer that I oversaw. And we did a lifestyle medicine approach. We had a cooking kitchen, all the things that you might expect. It was a wonderful opportunity. When you walked in, it looked like this. We were written up in automotive news, and it smelled like good food because we had the kitchen, and we would, Burger King sends out and Carl's Jr. sends out the smoke to get people to come into the restaurant. But they send out the charbroil, the steak that's cooking. We were sending out good smells, but it wasn't the steaks. It was other food. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Dr. Greger, but he's been doing research on food and health for a number of years. He reviews about 3,000 articles every year, and he puts together these books. He does talks on this. We had his book in every one of our exam rooms. So when a patient comes in with type 2 diabetes, we pull the book off the shelf. I still have mine over here. And we would read the chapter or give them assignments. The nice thing about his book is that the whole back third of the book is nothing but the research. And so, as you might imagine, we had a lot of engineers, and the engineers wanted to see the research. What does the research say? And so this was the way that we engaged them. And it was really to spark conversation around how powerful nutrition and lifestyle can be. I mentioned the teaching kitchen. We started off with one chef. By the time I left, we had about 3. People were very interested once they found out that you could actually eat healthy and the food actually could taste good. That's what a novel concept, that the food could taste so good. And so we actually had a waiting list we had one class where you would pay $40 because they had to pay for the food. But $40, you would do meals for a week for a family of 4. And you would go in, and for a couple of hours, you would do that, and then you would package it up so that you could put it in the refrigerator or the freezer. And then when you get home at night, after your job and you're tired, instead of just saying the easy way to go to McDonald's, you would pull something now out of your refrigerator, put it in the microwave, heat it up, do whatever you needed to do with it, and you had already prepared those meals in advance. That particular class had a 6-month waiting list. Even after we added chefs. So people are interested in this, they just don't get this. And one of the things we wanted to do is to say, what can we offer that people can't get in their regular neighborhood or through their regular doctor? The ROI strategy, as I said, return on investment. And the way I sold this to our CFO is that, quite frankly, healthy people need fewer medications. Healthy people need fewer doctor visits. And so when you work for a company where healthcare is not their business, they take a very different view of this than a company who healthcare is their business. So just think about that for a second. So anyway, let food be thy medicine. It's nothing new. We all know about this. And every couple of years or months, somebody comes out with a new diet. And what's the best diet? Is it the Twinkie diet? There was a Twinkie diet. I'm not making this up. Blue Zone's diet. I say the CCC diet. You probably say, well, what is that? That's the crack cocaine diet. I guarantee you'll lose weight on the crack cocaine diet. But my point is that not every diet that you lose weight on is healthy. So just because you can lose weight doesn't make it healthy. I don't recommend that diet. So anyway, we all know what the best diet is. There's no controversy over the best diet. It's high in nutritional value, low in empty calories, high in antioxidants, et cetera, et cetera. And what you know is that no surprises here. Whole food, plant-based diet checks all the boxes for what is a healthy diet. Yeah. And of course, that was the original diet, the Daniel diet. We know what a high fat does to our blood flow. This is an interesting thing because people say, well, I can eat a fatty diet. That's okay. Well, maybe not. So you see what person, this is baseline going right to 2 hours post-prandial or after you've eaten. And you can see what happens to the blood flow on average with a high-fat diet. So the squares are the high-fat diet. And so over time, you can see that it reduces your blood flow by about 30%, a high-fat diet. And so if you think about it, you have a high-fat, breakfast with a bunch of sausage and bacon and eggs and whatever. And then right about the time your body's recovering from the insult you've given it for breakfast, you go to McDonald's and get a high-fat lunch, and you drop your blood flow again. And then right about the time your body's recovering from that, you go to Sizzler and get some steak, and you hit it again. And this blood flow is affecting your brain. It's affecting your kidneys. It's every part of our body survives on blood flow. You think about it. So it's the flow and it's the payload. The payload is once the blood gets there, it has to have something. It has to have some antioxidants. It has to have some vitamins and nutrients. So that there has to have a healthy diet, but it has to get there first. And if you're loading it down with all of this fat, then the blood's not getting to where it needs to go to deliver that payload. And so, because you can say, well, I can just take a statin, that'll help me with my fat, but it's not going to change the blood flow. And so we need to keep that in mind. I think many of you are familiar with this, is that, one of the things with cheese is considered to be by most people a healthy food, but we can see that cheese has a lot of fat. And look at that cottage cheese, 2%. It has about half of your whole sodium load for the entire day. And yet that's supposed to be healthy for you. No. So we're doing a lot of things that needs to be education. That's where that second C comes in the MC square, competence. Because if people don't have the knowledge, even when they get motivated, they're going to fail because they don't really understand what it is they should be doing to be successful. We also know that processed anything is not that good for us, but processed red meats and even white meats are considered to be group 1 carcinogens. And this has been known for a long time. And so people will pride themselves in not smoking, but yet they're downing the bacon and the salami and those kinds of things. Now, that's not to say that, you never can have a hot dog when you go to the ball game, if that's what you want to do, but you shouldn't have it every day. What I say is that one cigarette isn't going to kill you, but if you smoke a cigarette every day, it is going to increase your risk of cancer. The same thing here. But a lot of people just don't even know this. And so these are things that we need to look at. I've put Dr. Greger's link here, and I can send this slide deck to you whenever if you want, but it talks about what causes diabetes. The teaser here is that it's really the saturated fat and how it's toxic, not only to our insulin receptors in our muscles, the insulin sensitivity, but also to our beta cells in the pancreas. And so anyway, this part of the presentation is really practical slides. I know we're getting up on time, so I'm going to go through this a little quicker. Just touch on a few things. Many of you have seen this slide. I use it in a little bit of a different way. I use it to compare a keto diet to a whole food plant-based diet. And so you see the water that's flowing out of the sink, and you see the people on the floor trying to, pick up the water when in fact they need to go to the root cause and either turn off the faucet or open up the sink. And then you spend less time on the floor dealing with the water. That's what we're trying to do with preventive medicine. The difference here is that what the keto diet does is it doesn't really do anything to your insulin receptors, which is opening up the sink. What it does is it puts less water in the sink. It doesn't unclog the drain. So naturally, if you put less, well, you turn off the faucet and put less water in the sink, you're going to have less of this blood sugar spilling onto the floor. What the whole food plant-based diet does is it works on cellular lipotoxicity, which opens up the drain. Because we know, as we mentioned before, a lot of those carbs are good. There's nutritional value, there's fiber in a lot of those carbs, like the baked potatoes. We want to have that as part of our healthy diet. And so if we treat the root cause in terms of opening up the sink, that actually can cure the disease. The keto will not cure it. If anything, it makes it worse because, again, what we're finding out now is that type 2 diabetes is a disease of lipotoxicity. So if you're loading up on a lot of fat and animal protein, you're actually making the case worse, but you don't know it because basically you're not putting any water in the sink. So you don't realize that the sink is still clogged, if that makes sense. We can talk about that more as well. This is from a lifestyle medicine physician practice, Dr. Wayne Dysinger. Some of you may know him. He's out in Riverside. This is his diet for an anti-inflammatory diet. Cruciferous vegetables, dark leafy vegetables, and dark berries. And the nice thing about this is that for cruciferous vegetables, you can choose broccoli, cauliflower. You say, I don't like Brussels sprouts. Well, that's okay. Go with the broccoli. I don't like cabbage. We'll go with the cauliflower. But try to get one of these every day. Same thing with the berries, blueberries, those kinds of things. And he prescribes this for 6 weeks with remarkable results. And so this inflammation can affect your joints. I don't know if any of you are having issues with arthritis and things like that, but you couple this with getting off of dairy, and you can see some remarkable things. You mentioned potassium lowers blood pressure. This is study research out of Harvard. Again, baked potatoes is one of the ways you do this, sweet potatoes as well. And then hibiscus tea. A lot of us don't like to drink water. But we know we shouldn't drink soda. Well, what about some iced hibiscus tea? It's very good. You can put some blueberries in there, and it's very sweet. It lowers your blood pressure as much as this blood pressure medicine captopril, which is a very common, often prescribed blood pressure medication. These are some other things that can lower your blood pressure. Flax seeds. Put a little flax seeds on your oatmeal in the morning. It's been shown to reduce your blood pressure by 10 to 15 points. Which rivals or is better than a lot of these medications that you see. We know that sugar actually reduces your immune system's ability to fight disease. 100 grams of sugar reduces your T cells' ability to fight germs by 40%. So in this time of COVID, we need to keep that in mind. So you say, so what's 100 grams of sugar? That's about what you get in a milkshake. Trans fat, I already touched on this. Trans fats and type 2 diabetes. This is out of the Journal of Diabetes. Again, we think it's eating the sugar, which we shouldn't eat. We just cut off that. But it's really these fats in our diets that we don't understand. Blueberries are brain health. We know that blueberries really can improve cognitive function. So I had my blueberries this morning because I knew I was going to be speaking to a smart group of people. I wanted to be sharp. So I always have my blueberries. And then what's also interesting about blueberries, if there ever was a superfood, there are a few. Blueberries is really good. This was a study that they did on women that had cervical cancer. And the standard treatment for cervical cancer, one of the treatments is radiation therapy. And when they do the radiation therapy alone, they reduce the tumor count by about 20%. When they added blueberry extract, they reduce the tumor count by 70%. How cool is that, right?
That's very cool.
That's it.
Yeah. this is like a companion therapy, right? But what I would say, when my wife says, she's over here on the couch, is, you know what? I don't need to wait until I get cervical cancer. I'm eating blueberries today, and it's going to make me smarter too. You know, there's another study that was done with blueberries. So they took some type 2 diabetics and they gave them pancakes, just regular old pancakes. And we know what pancakes will do, you know, the white sugar and the flour, it's going to spike your glucose, and then you'll have a concomitant insulin spike as well. And so what they did is they put a couple blueberries on top of the pancakes. And you would think, because of the fructose or the fruit sugar, that you would get even a greater spike in, you know, the sugar, and the glycemic index would go up. But in fact, it cut it in half just by adding blueberries. So what I say to patients sometimes is, you know what, if you can't give up the pancakes, at least add some blueberries to it. It'll help you out a little bit. So anyway, it's really kind of fun stuff and interesting stuff. It's not always what you have to take away. It's also what you need to add that can really improve your health. The other thing I always like to point out, and there was just a study that came out on this too about a week ago, but we've known this for a long time. This study in 2018 was not the first to show this. There's studies that go back to the 1990s. You can't cement your way to health. You can't just take a vitamin and say, I'm good. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And some studies, many studies actually have shown that it can actually be detrimental to your health. Now, that's not to say that you can't take, you know, B12 if you're a vegan. You may want to take some of that. You may want to take some vitamin D if you're actually low. So vitamins are excellent if you have an actual deficit of something. Okay, so I want to maybe clear on that. If you have rickets, I'm going to prescribe vitamin D. If you have scurvy, I'm going to give you some vitamin C. But just as a general, you know, I'm going to keep myself healthy by taking vitamins approach, that has shown not to be a successful approach. Actually, well, I think I'm almost to the end of my slides anyway. I just wanted to say that if you eat breakfast, good. It increases your metabolism, and you tend to burn calories better throughout the rest of the day. Processed foods, mentioned this before, and we know that about 2/3 of the calories in our teenagers and in our children now are from not just processed food, but ultra processed foods. It's leading to depression. It's leading to a lot of things. This was not food as God intended. And that's why we say whole foods, plant-based. The whole foods is just as important as the plant-based. If you can't go plant-based, at least go whole foods to the extent that you can. How do you know it's a whole food? It's a whole food that if it has less than 3 ingredients on the label, or if there's no label at all, right? A banana doesn't need a label, an apple doesn't need a label. But we've also seen ultra processed foods increase risk of overall cancer and breast cancer as well. I know you've had your lecture on fiber. The thing I would just add to it is that what you see here is we mentioned what makes a healthy diet: antioxidants, nutrient dense, cholesterol free, low fat. And so what this is showing is this shows you the number of calories per pound of a food item. And so the things that you see at the top of the line have a lot of fiber, a lot of nutritional value, and they're low in calories. And the things you see at the bottom lack a lot of those things that we need for a healthy diet, and they're higher in calories. This is important because what we also know is that it takes about 2.5 pounds of food per day to feel like you've gotten adequate food in your system. And so if you're eating from the green, the top, in order to get that 2.5 pounds, you would only consume about 1,400 calories in a day. If you're eating from the bottom red, you're going to eat about 2,500 calories. And for most of us, that's going to make us gain weight in order to feel satisfied. And the reason we know is because those foods are high in fiber, which absorbs the water, creates bulk, and we feel satisfied, we feel full. So just try to think about that and eat more from the top versus the bottom. The exception to that are the nuts and seeds. We do need some nuts and seeds, but again, about a handful that fits into the palm of your hand is sufficient for the day. But we do get some vitamin E and some important things from that. And that's it. I hope I've left enough time for questions, but I know I went at a little bit of a fast pace, but I hope you were able to get something out of it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dexter. That did bring up questions. I know it did bring up questions for me as well. We do have time. We're scheduled till 4:30. Listen, can you tell me, for people who have arthritis or those type of conditions, inflammatory conditions, what is the best approach?
Absolutely. So I touched on this. You really want to see, to the extent that you can, have an anti-inflammatory diet and remove, at least for a period of about 6 weeks, all the dairy, the cheese, the milk, and those kinds of things can greatly help you. And one of the ways you can measure this with your doctor is to have C-reactive protein blood level drawn, so that you can see your starting base of inflammation. And then over that 6 weeks, you can see how it decreases. And so that's one of the things you want to do, but also exercise, believe it or not. So exercise can actually be part of the treatment and remedy too. Yeah.
And not to hog all the questions, you guys are next. What is the correct ratio of intermittent fasting? I've been doing that, but I'd like to know what your idea is on that.
I don't think anyone really knows. In fact, the lifestyle medicine focused practice pilot that we're starting next month, that's one of the questions we're going to answer. So basically what we're doing is we have different lifestyle medicine groups of physicians treating patients. And one of the questions that we have in our protocol is, doctors, we know you all use a version of intermittent fasting. Just document what you're using on your patients. And then at the end of the study, we'll actually see which one improves health the most. My suspicion is that they're all good for the most part. So some of them, will do a daily intermittent fast where they eat 8 hours within the day and then they don't eat for 16. Some will do, 5 days of food, 2 days of fasting. Some people only do 1 day a week of fasting, those kinds of things. So, and then some will do like 5 days of fasting and just do that on a monthly basis. I don't think we know enough to really say which is the best. I think, whatever you feel comfortable doing that's not going to put you at risk. I would not recommend going 5 days necessarily without the help of your doctor. And if you're a diabetic or you have some issues like that, then you need to have your doctor, guide you through this. But probably the safest is to just go 8 hours on, 16 hours off. Would probably be one way to kind of start it. Our body, what's interesting is that Ellen White writes about this. This is in The Spirit of Prophecy, where she says, our stomach is no different than any other organ, and it needs rest. And when we don't give it rest, it breaks down. So this is based on Spirit of Prophecy, her writings as well, is that our bodies do need that rest. And I think that's why we do have so much leaky gut and that kind of stuff, because we're grazing all day. We're not really shutting down and allowing our intestines and our stomach to just kind of rest and repair itself. We all need that.
What is leaky gut, Dexter?
Leaky gut is when the mucosal or the lining of the gut starts to break down. And so this is probably between our gut and our skin is how we come in contact with our environment. And it has a protective function. right? It doesn't let things in that shouldn't be in. It only lets the things that are supposed to come in. And leaky gut is when that mucosal layer, that protective layer in our gut starts to break down. And now it lets things in. And so what can happen is that things that are not supposed to be in our body, say antigens, which these are things that our body reacts to, right? Our immune system reacts to antigens. It sets off our immune response. If it's leaky, it lets some of those things in. And so one of the reasons we talk about dairy is that there are antigens in dairy that are foreign to our body. And if our gut is leaky, then those antigens can enter our bloodstream and cause a immune response, right? An increased heightened immune response. And so I'm trying to say this in a way that it doesn't go too far down a rabbit hole, but think about it. All mammals make milk. That's why we're called mammals. But all mammals have different, what they call growth hormones within that milk, because mammals grow at different rates. A baby cow has to grow at a faster rate than a baby human. And none of us, I think, would ever want to drink pig's milk or, but a pig is a mammal, right? And so they have different antigens than we do, and it causes different rates of growth. Some of those rates of growth, if we take them in, would actually cause other things to grow that shouldn't grow, like tumors, for example, right? But those things can also enter our body and cause an immune response because it's foreign, it's not human. And so that's why we want to think about leaky gut. And so that's just one example of some of the things that it's letting in. Yes.
Yes, Doc, just want to express our gratitude. This has been overwhelming information. First, we're going to get back to you so that you can come and make a presentation for us at the church. This has just been I'm just so overwhelmed with the information that you have provided for us. However, having said that, do you have any style? Can you tell us, how do we get our people to have interest, in their head? Because this has been an ongoing issue that we have, even as Adventists. People just don't seem to be interested in being well. With all this information, I think it will do us a whole lot of good if we can get more people to listen and to participate in getting ourselves well. Because to me, what you are presenting today is that all these things that our doctors do is nothing but money-making business. Period. They are not in it to get us well, but to be pumping pills and pills and pills into us. So how do we get our people to understand this?
Well, I would say a couple of things. One is that you want to show people how this can empower them to take control of their own destiny. That's one thing. People like the idea of getting over on the system, so to speak. And if the system has been doing things not to their advantage, then this is a way to change that. The other is, as I mentioned, intrinsic motivation. And there are two ways maybe to start the conversation. One is around sleep, as I mentioned, because it's a fix that can happen in a person's life within days. I mean, you're going to feel better right away. And so maybe we approach this with the lifestyle lever of sleep, show people how they can get a good sleep. Maybe they're more anxious to or willing to engage on that than other things. And then the other is food, but food that tastes good. Don't give them raw carrots and a broccoli stick and a piece of celery. Let's show them what good food can really be about. And we can engage people that way too. There's some healthy versions of mac and cheese.
Oh yeah.
So let's you know what I'm talking about. So let's start there.
Oh yeah.
And you guys know that people will stand in line for hours for good food at a restaurant. Well, this good food just happens to also be healthy.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
We haven't done enough of that. Yeah.
thank you.
Betty Glenn has a question.
Yes, I was gonna call Betty
Yeah.
Glenn. Oh, it's Craig.
Greg,
Mascara.
you're on
You're on
you can
mute,
mute yourself.
Unmute.
You
You're
need to
on mute.
unmute.
You're on
Go on
mute.
mute.
Oh, Betty's gonna help.
Okay,
Craig,
there we go.
No, I'm not on mute.
You're not on mute now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
All right. So, well, I've been having a problem with nasal passages being blocked, and a medical medical missionary told me about a mucusless diet. So I looked it up, mucusless diet on the web, and the majority of the mucusless diet was Dr. Sebi. I'm pretty sure most of you guys heard of him. And some of the stuff that he was talking about to stay away from is like one of the things was turban. Now, and some of the other stuff, broccoli and a couple other things you were saying stay away from for 3 weeks. Now, I couldn't believe that. So, well, you got to point it out. So, do you know a mucusless diet? I'm trying to get rid of this. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, yeah, I'm not familiar with that particular diet that was prescribed or promoted, but I would not recommend it. I would go with dairy as well for that. We know that dairy is mucus producing. So to the extent that you can give up dairy for a while, again, 6 weeks seems to be the sweet spot. And the way I approach it is it's almost like allergies and elimination, right? You go without certain things and see if your allergies get better. So with the vegan or dairy-free diet, try it for 6 weeks. If it doesn't improve, we can try something else, but that's where I would start.
I've been off
The whole time?
Yeah, I've been off dairy for a long time.
Okay. All right. Well, we can look at some other things. Oftentimes, and not to say that you've done this or not, but dairy can be pretty sneaky. No. Yeah. they sneak it in there. You know, I don't know if you've ever looked at those powder coffee creamers that say non-dairy. And then you turn it over and it says it contains dairy. So,
dairy and bread. You have to read them
That's
out.
right. It's in bread. It's everywhere. So yeah. But we it sounds like
Oh, hi. So
super diet, but that's where.
Okay, so not that diet. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tina. Rose Robinson invited me here today. And I just have to praise you for finally having someone bring this to light, this whole discussion with, medication and foods. It's just not out there enough because I thought I was a healthy person. And a year ago, almost in July, I had a SCAD. It's a spontaneous cardiac artery dissection. And I'm a marathon swimmer. And I thought, everyone says you have to eat a lot of protein and red meat and fat and everything, to have muscle in swimming. And looking back on it, I think that you think you're healthy eating all of those products along with, vegetables and everything and exercising. It's not, I don't think it's so healthy. I think I was maxed out on meats and, you have all the fats in the meats, and also with the swim community, you have all of those high energy drinks that are just sugar, and so this is years and years. So thinking like healthy, I was not at all. And I've changed my whole diet around and doing a lot of research, with changing out medications, because instantly after I left the hospital, I was put on, I call them, like old man medication, sorry, but Lipitor and Plavix, because it's something I never thought I would be on, and it was horrible for me. I couldn't hardly take them. I would have to go off them for like 3 days to get any type of work done, because it was such a detrimental, like mind, like fog, and I couldn't concentrate. Anyway, to make a whole long story short, I did alternative researching with celery juice, lowers your I can't think. It's blood thinner. It's like a natural blood thinner. So I found out all these alternatives and high dosage of cod liver oil and omega-3. And also a big factor, which I wasn't even taking, so I was taking a lot of vitamins, was vitamin D3 and B12. And that was a complete game changer. It gives you energy, and there's so many different, vitality benefits from all of that. So anyway, I just wanted to I'm so glad I came, and I just wanted to say thank you. It was just really wonderful I wish there was more out there like this.
Yeah, well, there's a growing interest in this. And for those that are athletically inclined, I recommend the documentary Game Changer. It's about all of these super athletes that have now gone to a plant-based diet. I know the CEO of one company that I do some work with, Premise Health, out of Nashville. He's a marathon runner, and he went to a plant-based diet, and he's improved his times, and he's particularly improved his recovery time. And so what you're finding is a lot of these ultra marathoners are now going to plant-based because it just improves their times. So there's more and more interest, and his question is, because he's in healthcare, is how does he do this for his patient base without, I shouldn't have mentioned his name and where he was from, but how does he do this without, really hurting his bottom line, so to speak? But he's on board, yeah. But I recommend that documentary.
Okay, thank you.
So Madeline has a question.
Okay, hi. I have some family members that are suffering from like IBS, and I think you hit on it when you were talking about leaky gut and that. But could you talk a little bit more about the gut biome and maybe how to an approach to handling IBS?
Yeah, so IBS, that's a great question. In fact, the Food as Medicine trial that we're doing now has an IBS arm. And one of the things that we have to do in that arm is that we could not put them on a whole food, high fiber diet to begin with. And so we have to gradually introduce these things, because as you know, if you do that, their body will react. Their body is in such a state of disrepair in terms of the status of their gut, so to speak, that you have to just gradually incrementally put them forward on this. And so we start with a FODMAP diet, which has lower numbers of certain kinds of sugars and things like that, low in fiber, but then we gradually want to move them up. Oftentimes the way physicians treat this is they'll just start and they'll stop in the same place, and they'll just never escalate the diet, so to speak, or advance the diet. But it's important to do that, because over time we want to restore these people so that they can eat a regular, healthier diet. But that's the approach. And so you slowly go forward with them, but you can't just immediately put them on some of these diets that we've been talking about. And maybe your question has to do with perhaps they've tried that in the past and it hasn't worked out well. So I would just suggest you take a gradual approach.
Thank you. And one of our listeners, she asked me to tell you to thank you for this information, that she really enjoyed you so much.
Oh, well, tell her it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, Dexter, I have another question from one of our members here at the church. She wants to know more about blueberry extract, such as the recommended dosage, what's the best type if you go online to get it? Can you elaborate a little on blueberry extract?
Well, anytime you get any of those extracts, you want to get non-GMO organic products. That's probably the best place to start. But I would also say that extract is processed. So even though that study showed remarkable results with the extract, the way I do it is I just have a cup of a half a cup or a cup of blueberries every day. That's probably the best approach than resorting to extract. But if you have to go with an extract, then search it out a little bit and try to go with those that are non-GMO and organic. And you can see the little, seal on the bottom of the package. And there are various ones out there.
That's great. That's great. Oliver, did you have your hand still up, or is that from your last question?
I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, no, I just told the doctor that we'll be looking forward to working with him. I think we need him to come and give us some more presentation at the church. We are really grateful. Because our goal is in Oakland is to make our area a blue zone. And that's what we are working towards. It's hard, it's just like pulling teeth, but it's doable. Like I said today at the church, somebody in Loma Linda started a long time ago. So we can be the pioneers. We can start somewhere. And hopefully, we'll be able to help people and help ourselves as well to know how to be healthy.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I work for Adventist Health. They're out of Roseville. So that's not a long, it's a suburb of Sacramento for those who don't know. Yeah, even though I live in Oregon, but I work out of Roseville. So I'm sure that there's a way that we can coordinate one of my trips to headquarters in Roseville so that I can come on over to Oakland. The thing I'll say about this, you're lamenting that people don't want to do this. Think about it. It's much like the gospel. The gospel is good news, right? We have eternal life that we're offering people, and people don't want to partake. So lifestyle is the same way. We're offering people a way to be disease-free and to live a healthier life, but they don't want to partake. So just like a good pastor doesn't give up on his flock, we should not give up either. Amen. It's still the right thing to do. And for those that do sign up, those that do want to find salvation, that's the way it is. And it's a good thing for those that do, but we know that there'll be many that don't. Amen. But don't give up.
Never do.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We know that the health message is the important part of our work. And we know that Oakland and the Bay Area is one of the cities that Ellen White herself was concerned about. And we were talking this morning saying that we would love to have you for an 11 o'clock service.
Yes.
And
we'll coordinate with them.
We'll coordinate that. Yeah. Does anybody else online or here at the church, does anybody have any questions?
We're going to get the presentation, right?
We are going to get your slides. Yeah.
Yes, I'm happy to share.
Okay, so we'll get the slides. We'll get it all up.
We post that. When we post this, I want to post that with.
Oh yeah, we have our tech guy here. He's saying. And thank you for setting us up. If it wasn't for him, we would not be here talking with you right now. Sandra?
Yes. Oops, I almost lost you guys. Dexter, can you give us the name of your book again?
Okay.
And I want to know how come I didn't know about this before now, but give me the name of your book.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up. You know what? I wrote that book before I knew about lifestyle medicine. That was the Dexter you saw in one of those earlier slides that wrote that book. So I don't really recommend that book. I have to write another one. now that,
Yes.
now that I've been enlightened. So don't go out and buy that. I'm glad you brought, because I was going to say that when she mentioned it, but I forgot. Yeah, I'll work on a better one.
Notice when I saw your book, I said, why didn't I know he wrote a book? But all things work together for good, right?
You didn't miss anything. My dog's barking at your dog.
Oh, that's your dog? I thought that was Alabi's dog girlfriend barking, but no, that's your dog. So my dog is at home where we can't hear her barking. So yeah, it's been a great presentation. I really thank you, all of you who have joined, because we know that this will go out to many, many more people. And all of our presentations always do. They circulate around the United States and maybe further. But thank you all for being here. Thank you, Gail, Rebecca, and Betty, and Bernadette, and BG, and Lynn, and Norma, and Melanie, and Carla, Devon, and Clifford. And very special thanks to
And Craig.
Cartier.
Great.
And Craig, I forget, Craig is masquerading today as Betty Glenn. So, thank you. So goodbye. May God bless you.
Yes, God bless you. Thank you, everyone.
Take care,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Rebecca.
Bye.
Brenda.
Bye, Gail.
Bye, Patricia.
Bye, Deidre, Sandra, Dexter,
Bye.
everybody. Love you all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
There you go. I got you.
Oh, no.
I
Craig, that's
got you. You wanted to be on TV, right?
Oh, I thought I was gonna be safe.